first thing that we looked at was how do we get an application in place? And that worked well with the virtual appliances that you mentioned earlier. So we very simply and easily went out to our virtual appliance marketplace, grabbed, in this case, a Sugar CRM virtual appliance, dropped it into our existing infrastructure, and we were off and running. Second thing that we needed to accomplish was to meet the business goals for the team that made the request. So we talked with them about a service level agreement, and we came up with a 4-second metric for any request during a worst case loading. So anytime a user is using the application and clicks a go button, they should get a response within 4 seconds under worst case loading.
So this is an example of how we're evolving our management tools to allow you to talk to users in terms that are meaningful to them. So those quality of service contracts have to be expressed in terms of meaningful to the user, and then have the system automatically do the right thing under the covers.
You got it exactly. We're trying to move you from this idea of, well, you know, my CPU's not pegged, everything must be okay, right, to the users are really experiencing 7, 8, 10 seconds for each response. And as a part of this policy, we also have a corrective action associated. So if we come upon a circumstance where we're starting to exceed the SLA, we have additional capacity configured in the cloud. It's really just a virtual machine that is in a suspended state. It's in the off-premise cloud, and this policy has the ability to drive that load in the cloud, pull the virtual machine out of suspension, and then start driving user requests to it through our load balancer.
And the key point there is you'd only be charged by the operator when you bring it out of suspension.
Exactly. So we keep it suspended, it's on the disk, no charge. We use it during those key capacity times. That's when we get a charge. So we're going to show you a live running user interface here in a minute that's got, as you see here in this picture, a lot of very small little boxes. It's a little tough to look at for a large audience, so we grabbed a screenshot and put some labels on there just so you'll understand what you're looking at. This is an overview of our running application. On the left, we have a representation of the users generating the load onto the system. In the middle, we have the application tier, the application server that's actually responding to the users. To the right of that are the user actions. These are the things that the users do with the system. So things like clicking on a button, clicking on a link, and these are the things that we tie our policy to, that 4-second
These typically would represent transactions of some kind.
Transactions, user actions, exactly. Maybe a URL would be a way to think of it in some cases. And in the far right, we have the database tier, which is running everything. So let's go ahead and go into the live software. Have a look here. First, we'll pull up the aperture and zoom in on it a little bit so that we can...
Now, we're actually looking at the console of a future component of vCenter, which we call AppSpeed at this point.
That is
correct.
Which
is a tool to help you basically monitor and manage the quality of service associated with your applications.
You're absolutely correct. So we're looking at the AppSpeed console, so that was the topology overview. And then we've also switched over here to the dashboard view. The dashboard provides us with a series of key metrics like throughput, latency, the number of transactions that are going on. And in terms of being able to visualize what's happening under the covers, it's very powerful, so that's why we're looking at it right now. We have a server back there that's generating the load, and we should expect to see a spike in the latency, and that should initiate our SLA. So it's a little tough to see the scale on the left here, but just a little bit below the halfway point would be 4,000 milliseconds or 4 seconds, and that's where our SLA will kick in. It should initiate the policy. That policy, as we mentioned, should go out to the cloud on the remote off-premise site, bring the VM up, and there we go. We've actually exceeded it. We've kicked off the policy. And when the second VM comes up, it should start taking load.
Now, we see actually on the background here, we've seen these boxes go red. So that's where the system has said we've got a bottleneck.
Exactly. That's where we've exceeded our SLA, and we need to take a corrective action.
Okay.
Exactly.
Now again, we did all this without having to modify the application. Essentially, this is all in the wrapping that goes around the application.
Absolutely true. The AppSpeed application has the ability to learn about your application under load as opposed to any kind of instrumentation or changes to the application. And then for the corrective action, we just divided up the responses, put all the static responses up in the cloud, all the dynamic responses locally. So you see that it's...
So what's happened is we've now, as you can see down the bottom there, brought a second server into play here. The red's gone away because we've got our response times back down. And that server was actually provisioned in which cloud? Who was providing that?
That was actually a Bluelock cloud.
Okay, so that was kicked in and stitched into the fabric.
Exactly.
Thanks very much, Bruce.
All right,
Appreciate
thank you.
Thank you.